right, Ricky, come on. You got to be impressed.
I'm impressed.
Not only did they use it, they used the wrong tape.
Oh,
It's him, right?
he looked like a professor.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Philly Sports Convo. I'm Jason Lee. This is episode 24 of our little podcast here. And my guest, I've been a fan of this guy for a long time. He's been kind enough to have me on his podcast. So let's have him on this one. He is the great co-host of the Philly Pressbox Radio. Does that show with Bill Furman every Wednesday night, and we'll talk to him about that, and we'll talk to him about a whole bunch of stuff. There he is. It is the great Chet Chesko. Chet, how are you, man? Thanks for doing this.
Oh man, it's my pleasure, Jason. Thanks for asking me.
I love the background. You've got all four sports teams there. You got the can of Ring the Bell. I see anybody who follows you on social media, we know you're a big beer connoisseur. And let me start with that, actually, because you were just at a gathering, and I was envious. I wish I could have gone to this thing with Glenn Macnow and Angelo Cataldi and Al Morgani and Jason Stark and Jody Mack was there. All about the great sports debate and the new great sports debate beer that Conchi Brewing Company put out. And I remember back in the day, whenever the great sports debate was on, that was appointment television. What was that night like?
That was a lot of fun. Like you, I was a big fan also of the Great Sports Debate, the TV show. I think it ran like 89 to 94, something like that,
right.
Maybe 95. Just so much fun. And so when they announced this, I said, I got to be there for that. And the new beer, Great Sports Debate Amber Lager, is actually pretty good. And they had all four of the original hosts there. They actually did a show beforehand that it will be airing very soon on NBC Sports Philadelphia. So Watch your listings for that. But yeah, the beer was good. The night was great. They raised a bunch of money for CHOP. So yeah, a lot of fun.
It's a great night. I know you had Angelo Cataldi on your show recently. I only got to talk to him on the air one time, but he was great. You've talked to him many times. Just tell me what it's like having him on and what he's like as a guest. I mean, I thought he was great, and I saw your conversation. I enjoyed that too.
A lot of people said, Angelo seems so much nicer now that he's not on the radio anymore. He's been on 4 times in the past 13 months with me and on our show, and just terrific. I mean, I had him on first because he was promoting the new book, and then I thought, that would make a good Christmas gift too. So I had him on a second time right before Christmas, and then twice this year talking about Eagles and all the things he's got going on now. There's the new Wing Bowl movie that is out. There's this great sports debate night, a couple other things he's involved with. So he was terrific, just very forthcoming. Still, like when he was on the radio, he does not hold back. He speaks what's on his mind.
Right.
He made a controversial prediction before the season. The Eagles were going to go 5-12.
Yes.
He's eating some crow for that right now, obviously. He's not a Nick Sirianni fan, but he's still so much fun to talk to.
And to his credit, he admits that he was totally off base on that. The one thing I noticed, you said that he seems like he's nicer ever since he stopped, ever since he retired. To me, it seems like he's more awake.
Who wouldn't be?
As a guy who wakes up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go to work every day, I can relate. And I'm looking at him and I'm comparing that to TV appearances from back in the day, and he seems more awake. And I mean, he kind of does seem happier, but I will tell you, if you get a lot of sleep, you are a happy person, I would assume, right?
Well, I retired just this past summer, as a matter of fact, from my full-time job. I worked in radio for like 40-some years. Many of those years were working like 5 a.m. to noonish. So I would get up 3:30 or so. You know how it is. It's tiring. You feel like you need a nap. You don't usually get that nap. So I was not one of those guys who could go to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I would stay up till 10 or 10:30 and get, maybe 5 hours sleep on a good night.
Right.
So I don't miss that at all.
I can imagine. And, I was actually looking back at your career. It was, I guess a couple weeks ago, it was like National Radio Day or something, and you put on Facebook all the call letters and all the stations that you worked at. And you've been on stations because you worked for the Wall Street Journal and you worked for Compass Media. So you were on stations all over the country, right?
Yeah, for both Wall Street Journal Network and more recently Compass Media Networks. It was a network of in the most recent case, about 150 stations. Wall Street Journal Radio was bigger, but they ended up disbanding for whatever reason, giving that up. But yeah, so networks or stations around the country would pick us up and air these little 1-minute business newscasts that I did, or sometimes longer. And then you would do some specific targeted reports for stations. Like in my case, it was stations in Pittsburgh, KDKA, the legendary KDKA,
Wow.
plus stations in Detroit, New Orleans, and Seattle. So that was fun. Memories. But yeah, I also worked in State College, WMAJ out there, the home of the Penn State Nittany Lions at the time. I traveled around, but yeah, most of the last few decades were in the Philly, Jersey area, which is where I make my home now.
You know, you're one of those guys, and anybody watching or listening to this, I promise you we're going to get to a lot of Eagles talk, a lot of Sixers, want to get to some Phillies as well. But you're one of those guys who, when I hear you talk, I mean, you just sound like you were born to be a broadcaster. Was this something you always wanted to do?
Absolutely. When I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to do something in radio or TV or something connected to sports. So I would, keep stats on all the games and everything and pretend that I was announcing them or just reciting stats into a fake microphone,
right,
that sort of thing. Now batting,
Yes.
And in high school, my senior year, I had played basketball from 7th grade to 11th grade. I was pretty mediocre at best. So instead of going on to try out for the varsity team, which I don't think I would have made because I wasn't that good, me and another guy ended up broadcasting 6 of the team's home games that year. And it was the first ever time they had done anything like that in my high school. Shout out to Mahanoy area, the Golden Bears, by the way, up in the Cole region. So yeah, we broadcast 5 or 6 games on local network TV. So that was my introduction to broadcasting. Then I also majored in communications at Penn State.
Love that. Love that. Well, it's certainly been a great career, and luckily for us, it keeps on going with Philly Pressbox Radio each week. So
hey, let me ask you something.
Yes.
Let me ask you something.
Please.
I looked at the list of people you've had on here in your sports convos.
Yeah.
Mike Sealski, Mark Farzetta, Tyrone Sharper, Mike Missinelli, Ray Dinger, Bernie Perrant, Larry Anderson, Larry Boa, Merrill Reese. What the hell am I doing here?
What? No. Why would you say that? I mean, come on. You're
don't
here.
think I'm quite at that level as the guys I just mentioned.
Well,
but thank you for having me.
Now,
Jason.
listen. Let me tell you. I said at the top, and this isn't podcast BS. I've been a fan of what you do for a long time. I think you and Bill do a great show. You've been kind enough to have me on the show, and I really enjoy what you do. And like I said, I like people. You just ooze broadcasting, and because I'm a broadcasting geek myself, I kind of gravitate toward people like that. So I'm glad to have you on. And to me, you're right up there with those names that you mentioned.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, let's get to the business at hand, because there's so much sports to talk about. And as we record this on this is what 17th, Sunday, November 17th. Yeah, okay. I should have looked that up beforehand. We're recording this on Sunday, November 17th, so we're just a couple of days after the Eagles-Commanders game. And I don't know about you. I thought the Eagles would win. I thought it would be a squeaker. I didn't think it would be anything like it was. I mean, I know you look at the score, it looks like a close game, but that Commander touchdown toward the end to me was kind of like in garbage time. Your thoughts on the Eagles, the turnaround, and in your mind, what's been the main reason for the turnaround?
Well, it was kind of a squeaker until the end of the third quarter, and then the Eagles just kind of went nuts in the fourth quarter and pulled away. But I think that the big key for the Eagles was that bye week. They were 2-2 at the bye, not really playing well those first 4 games. They did beat the Packers down in Brazil. Yeah, that was nice. But the next 3 games, kind of shaky, to be honest. But they got it together over the bye week. Some of the offensive linemen apparently, had a meeting with Sirianni. Says, we've got to run the ball more. We got Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Let's use him the proper way. And I think that was the turnaround right there. And these guys, I guess A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith had to buy into that because they're not getting maybe as many targets as they normally would. But it's all about winning, and that's all they've done since the bye, 6 in a row. So, that's what turned it around for me, I think.
Now, and you look at the defense. The defense is, you could say it's a Super Bowl caliber defense at this point. We weren't saying that in the first few weeks of the season. What's been that turnaround? Was it just a question of, the guys gelling? They just needed time? needed time to get used to Vic Fangio's system. In your mind, what was the reason for that turnaround?
Yeah, I think that's it exactly. It just took a while for them to buy into what Vic Fangio wanted to do and to learn how to do exactly what he wanted them to do. But I mean, they are solid from front to back right now. In the past couple of years, we were worried about that secondary with Slay getting older, and they didn't have CJ GJ last year. He's back now, and of course the rookies, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. They've been fantastic, boy. The top two picks and certainly worthy of it. So they are amazing. Nakobe Dean looking like he can actually play. That's great to see. And this Zach Bond, who, Vic Fangio talked about him when they got him. Like,
amazing.
Fangio liked this guy. We didn't know anything about him. Came from New Orleans, did nothing special down there. Now he's looking like an all-pro. So that's great. Jalen Carter becoming the dominating force we thought he could be. Bryce Huff still kind of but otherwise the front guy's doing well. Yeah, the defense has really surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, they've been looking great. So with this turnaround and this 6-game winning streak, you've got a lot of the national pundits saying that it's the Eagles and the Detroit Lions. I don't know if the Eagles are quite at Detroit's level yet. Where do you rank the Eagles in terms of the conference, and where do you see this season ending up?
Yeah, the Lions still have to be number one in the unofficial power rankings. But I think the Eagles are right there at number 2, along with the 49ers. Don't count out the Niners either.
I agree.
Because, they got McCaffrey back now, so they're going to be good. Brock Purdy is not just a game manager. He's a solid quarterback. So I think it's those 3 teams, the Lions, Eagles, and Niners, who are going to compete to go to the Super Bowl. We'll see how it all plays out. It would be nice to get the number 1 seed. You get that bye week. So, you got to get a Lions loss or 2 along the way for that to happen.
So, one of the negatives from Thursday night's game, not that you want to dwell on the negative, but it's hard not to talk about this, was Jake Elliott. And it was kind of hard to watch him missing a couple of field goals, missing an extra point. What do you think's going on with him? I mean, should we worry about our kicking game now?
I'm not going to worry about it based on that one game.
I agree.
I think part of the problem is he just hasn't had as many opportunities this year. They, maybe that is due in part to Sirianni going for it so many times that Elliott hasn't had all the kicks that he would normally have in a season. I'm just going to chalk it up as one bad game until I see further evidence to the contrary. I still have faith in Jake Elliott. They're going to count on him. They're going to need him as this season goes along. They got some big games coming up.
I heard somebody on WIP, I forget which host it was. I want to give proper credit. It might have been Joe Giglio, I forget, but I heard somebody on sports radio say that maybe the fact that Braden Mann is now handling the kickoffs and Elliott's just pretty much sitting there cold the entire game, maybe that has something to do with it. Do you think there's anything to that?
Yeah, I think that could be the case because you get a little rusty when you don't get as many opportunities. So, he's not out on the field as much. I think that could be. Maybe want to allow him to do a kick or 2 along the way, in addition to the place kicking duties otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm curious, and this has been talked about so much, but I'm curious your overall view of Nick Sirianni these days. Whether it's him, barking at the crowd, whether it's, his goofy antics, that he does before or during or even after games, having his kids up in press conferences with him. I mean, you can't argue with the record, I guess. They are 8-2, and you look at his overall record, and it's so much more to the good than the bad. There's a Super Bowl appearance. There's playoff appearances every year. Your thoughts on him overall as a head coach?
Well, breaking news, Jason. Philly fans are often overly critical. And I think that's
I hadn't heard that.
Certainly the case with Nick Sirianni. There's this rush to judgment. They're too until they fire the guy. I think 42-19 is his record, I believe.
I think you're right,
and people just still will not accept him. I have this vision. They're going to win the Super Bowl, maybe. And if they do, people will say, yeah, but they want it in spite of Sirianni. There are some people who just don't like the way he looks or the way he handles the pressers, the way, he yells at the fans, as you mentioned. Give the guy a break. And right now he's kind of this CEO coach. So if something they say, oh, well, Sirianni must have overruled, the coordinator. If something good happens, he never gets any credit. I think he is overly and unfairly criticized. I'm not saying he's Vince Lombardi or, even Andy Reid, but he's clearly doing a good job. Been to the playoffs every year, been to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They're 8-2 this year. Don't be so hard on Nick.
Yeah, it's funny. I said before the beginning of the season, and it kind of like piggybacks off of something you just said, that he's kind of in a no-win situation because if the Eagles have a good season this year, well, it's because of the new coordinators. If they have a bad season, well, he's going to get blamed. So it's almost like it's a no-win situation for him. I mean, right. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I clearly agree. It's exactly how I see it, and it is a no-win situation. So they just got to hope that they keep winning, and suddenly people will think, yeah, maybe he's not so bad. They're never going to say he's a great coach, but if they can just get to the point, well, maybe he's not so bad. We'll take that.
Yeah, hey, listen, winning cures everything. And you reminded me of something when you said that, Philly fans have a tendency to, like, how'd you put it? Like, rush to judgment, jump to conclusions, be a little harsh. How many times did Al Michaels...
Rush to gun.
Yeah. How many times did Al Michaels on the Amazon broadcast Thursday night say, oh, well, Eagles fans are booing as they've been known to do? And I'm a huge Al Michaels fan, but it's like, come on, man. Every fan base boos, do they not? But it seems like whenever it happens in Philly, it seems like the national broadcasters make a big deal out of it.
For better or worse, that is Philly's reputation. That's not going to change. And yeah, there is a lot of booing. There is a lot of criticism by Philly fans. It is what it is, and people just got to deal with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, okay, so if we can look into your Chet crystal ball, where does this season end up? Does it end up in the NFC Championship game? Does it end up in the Super Bowl? Does it end up with a parade down Broad Street? I know a lot can happen between now and then, but just at this point, what do you see? What do you think?
Well, these next couple of weeks are going to tell us a lot. Going out to LA to play the Rams, who've been up and down this year, is not going to be easy. They still have a lot of talent on that team. And then the game with the Ravens is going to be a real test. See, the other great running back in that one, Derrick Henry. If you can get a split out of those two, I like the Eagles' chances to at least get to the NFC Championship, because the schedule after that, not bad at all. A lot of games home or close to home, no real trip, as far as airplane trips,
right?
The latter part of the season. So I think they're at least going to get to the NFC Championship. Beyond that, who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. Got to turn to the Sixers. It's just been a disaster. If you can describe the season so far in one word besides disaster, what would it be?
I'm going to train wreck, because that's kind of what it's been for the 76ers. Man, 2-10 or whatever they are as we speak. I don't know.
2-10.
Anything that can go wrong has gone wrong for them. The whole Embiid situation, the health, and the thing with Marcus Hayes. Paul George, not being ready to start the season either because he got injured in the preseason. And then Maxey getting hurt and being lost for a couple of weeks. Guys they added over the summer who we thought would be good depth are now being asked to play more, and they're not really built for that. So it's not a huge shock to that end that they're struggling so much. But the Embiid thing is just really a killer, and he's deservedly getting criticized. And I'm a huge Joel Embiid fan. I really am.
Yep.
But just to not be ready to start the season, that's primarily on him. And then the Sixers organization, the poorest rise in the city, by the way, just not giving full disclosure about what's going on. They're just saying he's ramping up without saying, what he's ramping up from, without saying, is there a knee injury? It's just like knee maintenance, ramping up, whatever. It's just poor job by the Sixers and everybody involved. So I'm a little down on the team right now. Still rooting for them, but
well, of course,
not real happy with them.
Yeah, really, and that sums it up. I mean, we're always going to root for them. They're our team. But yeah, I mean, how can you be happy with them? looking back, and of course hindsight's 2020, but I mean on this podcast I did say I wasn't really thrilled with the with the prospect of Embiid playing in the Olympics. What were your thoughts on that? I mean, because actually before you answer that question, might have been Mike Sealski. He made a great point when we were talking about this on this podcast. He said Embiid playing in the Olympics, maybe he'll learn how to win. He'll be around all these people, they're going to win a gold medal. He'll learn how to win, and that's a good thing, and that is a good thing. But then you look at, he can't play back-to-backs. I mean, should he have been playing in the Olympics, do you think?
I heard Mike's reasoning, and I agreed with him. I thought it would be good for Embiid to play in the Olympics because, he's going to be around all these winners and you see their work ethic up close. Yeah, he got the medal, right, but I don't think the work ethic paid off because if it were the case, instead, he had 2 months to get ready and he's still not ready. And during that time, he gets this contract extension that's paying him, $60+ million a season.
Astounding.
So he's getting paid more than $1 million per game played, and it's just crazy. And I'm not one of these guys to say, the money is crazy, they shouldn't be getting that. Hey, that too is what it is nowadays. But, it just makes you wonder what the Sixers are doing. This guy all this money and not now getting the results that they or we would hope for.
Right. So you look at it in terms of what you just said, and how bleak does the future look? I mean, we've been asking for years, will this team ever win a championship with Embiid? We have to keep asking that question, and it certainly doesn't seem like they're going to. So then you got to look back and say, okay, was the process a failure? Was the process a waste of time? What are your thoughts?
Probably is going to go down as a failure because I don't see them winning a title with Embiid or, this current crew. But it's not as bleak for this season as it may seem right now because I think Embiid is going to continue to ramp up. I do think, he and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey will actually play together in one game at some point and hopefully several games.
Hopefully.
I think they're going to get into the playoffs, play-in teams, in the 7 to 10 area do so. But, they could, if all goes well, they could actually make some noise in the postseason. And even next year, because I think, George and Embiid still have a little bit more in the tank, and Maxey's going to get better. And then there's the kid, Jared McCain, who has really been a pleasant surprise.
He's been looking good.
It's not totally bleak for the next couple of years, but, once Embiid is gone or really going downhill, which could soon, then who knows what's going to happen. So, yeah, the process not going to go down as a success, unfortunately.
So I'm hearing you correctly. So look, they're 2-10 right now. You do see them at least getting in the playoffs, even if they have to backdoor it. They're going to get into the playoffs somehow. You say, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. And depending on how healthy everybody is come next May, they could even steal a round or two. Once again, it's going to be an earlier exit than we would hope for. You're not going to get to the finals.
How badly do you feel for Nick Nurse? I mean, you look at the guy in the press conference after games, and he just seems like he's beaten up. Obviously, figuratively, he just seems totally beaten up, and he's the one who has to answer all the questions about Embiid. Where's Daryl Morey in all this?
Same situation as we had with Brett Brown previously, and to a lesser extent, maybe Doc Rivers. They're kind of put out there, and Morey, who created this mess, the recent mess, just kind of sits in his office and watches it. Yeah, I do feel badly for Nick Nurse because I think Nurse is a very good coach. He's won a title.
Yeah.
But, he's clearly got to cover up for the Sixers' mistakes and try to make some kind of sense out of what's going on. So, yeah, I feel badly for Nick Nurse.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll just wait and see what happens. It's been how long's it been since the Sixers got past the second round? I guess it was 0-1, right? That was the last time. It was 0-1, correct?
I think it was 0-1, yeah.
It was 0-1.
Yeah, Iverson.
So it's been a little while. And we went through 4 years of the process, and we still haven't gotten past the second round.
Yeah, and it could be another few years before it happens. So, not a great time to be a Sixers fan.
And you know what makes it even worse is that it seems like, in the interim, Boston has built up yet another dynasty. And that's, I don't know about you, but I'm a lifelong Philly sports fan, and part of being a lifelong Philly sports fan is that you hate certain teams. You hate the Cowboys, you hate the Boston Celtics, and they're building up quite a dynasty in Boston.
Yeah, and they didn't need a process to do it.
That's true.
They did it the right way, just drafting well and developing players. The Sixers apparently didn't think that was the way to go because they were stuck in that, mid-range zone, and they didn't think they would be able to move on up without going lower. So the unfortunate thing is most of those draft picks didn't work out so well. The Jahlil Okafors and Ben Simmons, of course,
yeah.
Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
So
Markelle Fultz. They traded up to get Markelle Fultz with Boston, right?
Bad moves.
Yeah, it was terrible. All right.
Boston laughed at that one because.
No doubt about it. A good friend of mine is a big Boston sports fan, and he doesn't let me hear the end of it, and I'm tired of hearing it. All right, I want to move to baseball, and I'm curious. Your thoughts on the Phillies' offseason needs. If you're Dave Dombrowski, assuming you've got the capital from John Middleton, where do you begin?
Don't think you even try to go after Juan Soto. I know a lot of people want them to.
No, I agree with you totally. Yeah, go ahead.
But then you're going to have Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper making less money than Juan Soto. He won't be happy about that. So I don't know if it's great to go after Soto. I don't think they will, at least not go all in for him. So forget about that. But they have to make some moves because you can't just run it back after the way the last couple of seasons ended with, postseason disappointment and some of the key guys flailing at pitches out of the zone. You got to get some new faith in Harper. They're not trading Trey Turner. Schwarber's not only going to be back, he may get an extension. So that falls to, what we're seeing in the papers and online as rumors. Alec Bohm, Marsh, these guys on the trends because you got to get some fresh faces in there and maybe some guys who have a different approach to hitting because it's tough for these current guys to change their approach, having been in the league many years. So, from Houston, I guess. That's a possibility. The pitching staff still looks pretty good. So even if they go after a Crochet or somebody, I'm happy with the starting pitching staff, certainly. And the bullpen, a letdown in the postseason, but there's a lot of good arms in the pen. We'll see. But there will definitely be some changes because you have to mix up the lineup a little bit from the guys who finished the last 2 years.
Yeah, I have never seen a lineup where they all go cold at the same time, and it happened in 2023 against Arizona. It happened again last season, more than a few times, but especially in the postseason against the Mets. How is it possible that so many great hitters, so many big names can all go cold at the same time? You would think, okay, if a couple of people go cold, a couple others in the lineup will, hey, we'll pick you guys up. They all at the same time. It's astounding to me, Chet.
That's the big mystery. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think the Phillies know what the answer is. So that's why you got to get some new guys in there in the hope that, maybe these fresh faces will perhaps prevent something like that from happening. But, yeah, a lot of guys went cold. And then you have Harper, who did not go totally cold, but wasn't hitting for power the way he used to. I don't know. I just don't know what to expect from this team anymore. Real Muto, the catcher, he did not finish strongly.
No.
And he's 34 or something like that now. So he's got maybe 1 year, I think, left as their starting catcher. Another position to worry about, I guess.
Yeah. In meantime, we see the Mets building up quite a team. What if Juan Soto ends up on the Mets? Everybody's saying that he likes New York. What if he ends up with the Mets? We know Steve Cohen has seemingly endless money to spend. How much tougher is that for the Phillies?
Yeah, that would not be a good thing for Phillies fans because we saw what the Mets could do with the roster they have. They were, I think, the best team in baseball from mid-June on, certainly finished strong. Yeah, if they got Soto, that would make them certainly the perennial favorite, prohibitive favorite to win the NL East next year as well. So, yeah, the Phillies have to do something because they may end up in third place otherwise next year.
Can you imagine that? Third place. Wow. And you know, and as a Phillies fan, I wonder, I mean, it's almost like you wonder how packed the ballpark is going to be next season because it's like, okay, been there, done that. I mean, even if they're in first place from wire to wire, okay, been there, done that. Show me what you can do in the playoffs. Do you think the fans will be as into this baseball team next season as they were the last couple of years based on the letdowns?
I think there's going to be a wait and see approach for a lot of fans because of what you just said, the letdowns, and the fact that, we're so geared now to the postseason. The regular season doesn't seem to matter as much. There'll still be crowds, for opening day, for the big series, for fireworks night, for some of the key opponents coming in, and the Dodgers are in town. Certainly the games will be. Yeah, as far as the Thursday game in, early May or whatever, that's going to be a tougher sell because people aren't just going to automatically say, hey, let's go see the Phillies. No, there's got to be a reason. And right now, there's probably going to be some hesitancy given the way the last couple of years ended.
Yeah, no doubt. So, you and I have been sports fans for decades and decades, a long time. We're both very old. Where does last season rank for you in terms of disappointment? I mean, we all had high hopes for this team, and they don't even get out of their first round, not the first round, but their first round. Where's that rank for you in terms of Philly sports disappointments?
That's a lengthy list, Jason. That's a lengthy list.
I know it is.
We've had a lot of disappointments. I mean, the final year that the Eagles played at the Vet, that was a major disappointment.
Oh, the Tampa game, Tampa Bay, oh, man. Yep.
In a poke breaker for sure. Sixers have disappointed us. They haven't won a title since 1983. The Flyers, who won those two cups 50-plus years ago now, haven't won another since. They've had a lot of deep playoff runs, but they never ended the way we would have hoped.
Yep.
And yeah, the Phillies, who had that great run from 07 to 11, I guess, but only got one World Series out of it. And now this more recent team, they get to the series, but then they take a step back each of the next 2 years. So we're used to disappointment, Jason, unfortunately, but I'm hoping better days are ahead.
Well, that's the thing, and you just said it. They've taken a step back each year. And it kind of mirrors that 07 to 11 run. It was World Series 08. They lose the World Series in 9. They lose the NLCS in 10. They lose the NLDS in 11. Then they're not heard from again in the playoffs for 10 years. And the Phillies have been taking a step back here the last couple of years too. You hope that trend doesn't continue. I guess time will tell, right?
Yeah, that's the hope, man. That is the hope.
So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Flyers real quick before we wrap this up. I'm a big Tortorella fan, and I know it seems like they've been up and down. And the last couple of games have looked good. They had that nice shootout win against San Jose, a nice win the other night. Your thoughts on the Flyers and Tortorella? And obviously they're a couple of years away at least, but the direction they're going, what do you think?
I'm mildly optimistic about the. I like Keith Jones. I like Danny Briere. Tortorella, can sometimes rub people the wrong way, including some of his players. He benched Mishkov, made him a healthy scratch for a couple of games.
Yeah, that I didn't understand.
Which, he called it, I guess, a teaching. Mishkov has played better since then. I think the concern with the kid is his defense, because even though he's a forward, he's still got to get back on defense, and he apparently hasn't been doing that the way he should be. But the future is bright, I think, because him. Konechny clearly still has a lot left in the tank. They've worked so well together, those two guys. So because of the fact that they have a lot of good players who are still pretty young, and the fact that, Briere and Keith Jones, know what they're doing, I think. I do think the future is bright. They could even sneak into the playoffs this year. Don't count that out, but I think definitely the next couple of years are going to be better. The one key concern, as is so often the case with the hockey team, is Sam Ersson is good, but I don't know that he's great. And then the backups, including Fedotov, who got a win Saturday night, is a concern. I don't know that they have the strength between the nets that you would like to see from the Flyers. So that's my major concern, I think, is the goalie.
You know what? And it seems like through the years, that's always been the concern with the Flyers. Whenever they've had a good team, I mean, you can go back to when, they had a great team, but they had John Van Beesbrook in net. I mean, you got to go back to Ron Hextall, when they had a real legit shutdown goalie, Hextall, and then the late great Pelle Lindbergh before that. But after that point, it's been all uncertainty between the pipes.
Yeah, it really has. And we thought we had one in the last few years, and then he got into trouble.
Yes, right.
Trouble with that didn't pan out quite the way we would have hoped. But maybe Ersson can be good enough. Maybe one of these Russian backups can continue to improve. And sometimes goalies develop later. The guy that we ended up losing to Columbus and wherever he is now, that hurt. So
that hurt big time, yeah. Bobrovsky.
Goaltenders are funny. They're kind of like relief pitchers.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah,
that's a really good analogy. Yeah. So, all right. Well, as always, Chet, the time goes by quick. Talk about the show, Philly Pressbox Radio. When it's on, I know you have kind of a new platform where the show can be found. So talk about all that if you would.
Yeah, Philly Pressbox Radio is a show that we've been doing pretty much every week since 2014. Bill, in 2013, we were both writing some articles and doing occasional podcasts with this other fledgling blogger and website. And then Bill and I decided in early 2014, hey, let's break off and do this thing on our own. So 10 and we rarely take a week off. I think we're up to 522 shows now over those 10 and a half years. Great guests all the time. Typically Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And guest every show, sometimes two guests, like this week that we're talking about right now. We have Kayla Santiago from the Delmarva Sports Network, who co-hosts with Keith Pompey the Locked On Sixers podcast, does a great job with that. And a singer-songwriter, I try to mix it up once in a while. We have a singer-songwriter on named Chuck Brodsky, and 22 of his songs are in the Baseball Hall of Fame as far as their recordings, because he's done some two to baseball. That's so a talented guy, Chuck Brodsky, will be on talking about his songs, his music, and his love of the Phillies and baseball in general. But yeah, Bill and I have a blast doing it. We have terrific guests, as you know, Merrill Reese every September, Tom McCarthy and Scott Fransky every spring to talk about the Phillies. Brandon Lee Gouton from Bleeding Green Nation is on frequently. Dee Lynam, who covers the Sixers and works weekends at 97.5 The Fanatic. And then Angelo Cataldi.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, Ray Didinger, been on our show 25 times. Ray Didinger doesn't need us for anything in his career, but he likes coming on to talk with us. He's been on 24 times, soon to be 25th. So we love Ray Didinger.
Isn't Ray the greatest? I mean, I've always said, if anybody could have a big ego, it's him. And he doesn't. And it astounds me that he does. The man's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, for God's sakes. And he's as down to earth as they come. I love the guy.
Absolutely one of our favorite guests, and saw Ray Diddy at that event the other night as well. Just a gentleman and a wealth of knowledge. I always feel like I learn something when we have Ray Didinger on the show.
Absolutely, and that's the funny thing about it. It's like we've been Eagles fans our whole lives, and we think we know everything there is to know about the Eagles and about pro football. But you talk to Ray, and you learn something every single time. And so I had Ray on this podcast just one time. Hopefully, I hope to have him back on again soon. But the one episode I had him on, had the most views by far. We're talking by thousands and thousands by far of any other episode I ever did because he's Ray Didinger. I mean, because the man, what they call him, the Godfather, and for good reason. The man's amazing. So
he is, and we're happy to have him on as often as we do. We will have him on again soon too, Jason. So watch for that, folks.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I would love that. So now you are seen on the help me get this, the STT Sports Network, setting the trends, right?
Yes, and I always have to be careful saying that. It's not STD. That's something totally different, folks. It is the STT
I didn't think
Sports
about
Network. STT stands for Setting the Trends.
Yes.
Yes, run by Phil Stifle from Trending in the AM. I know you know Phil, great guy. Boy, talk about a guy who can talk sports. Phil Stifle does his show every morning, hour and a half, frequently by himself.
Yes.
I don't know how he does it.
I've said that to him many times.
Set up this little network recently, and we are kind of the flagship show on there with him. So his show is Trending in the AM on the STT Sports Network, and then we are on there every Wednesday night.
Listen, I've been a fan of Phil's a long time. Phil's been on this podcast a couple times. Phil was actually on my old TV show a couple times. You're right. He's tremendous at talking sports. You can tell he does his homework. And to do, as you alluded to do an hour and a half talk show by yourself every day, I don't know how he does it, because he does that, then he goes to his regular job. I mean, dude, that's a long day. That would wipe me out. But Phil can do it, and you guys make a great team. You're putting together a pretty good network over there. I see, that the subscribers are going up and the views are going up, and I love to see it, because you and Phil and Bill, you all do great work. I enjoy everything you guys do.
Another guest we have coming up in December, as we do every year, Freddie Barnett, who was one of my favorite players from the early 90s Eagles. Yeah, Freddie has been on with us since 2015. So it's kind of another annual tradition. Freddie Barnett, Arkansas Fred. Well, listen, Chet, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You know, I'm a fan of what you guys do. It is Philly Pressbox Radio, Wednesday nights at 7, STT Sports Network on YouTube. You got to check the show out. And, Chet, I hope we can do this again. I got to have you back on another episode, all right? Anytime. You name.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for watching episode 24 of the Philly Sports Convo. We'll talk to you next time.